On today's Locked On Jayhawks, we're going to be deep diving into Flory Bidunga, the 2024 five-star number 3 recruit in the country who just visited KU this past
You
weekend.
are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You can hear me as well, Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. on Rock Chalk Sports Talk with KLWN, your flagship station in Lawrence, from 3 to 6, Monday through Friday. You can find Locked On Jayhawks wherever you get any of your podcasts. Thanks for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. We are also available on YouTube where you can like and subscribe to the show. And on today's edition of Locked On Jayhawks, we're going to be deep diving into Flory Bidunga, a great name and a player who just visited KU over this past weekend, or at least that was supposed to be the plan. Was supposed to come in this past Friday. I believe everything happened and occurred. That was obviously the plan and everything. He's a class of 2024 recruit. So not this class, but would be the year after. He does have the ability to reclassify, though. And that adds some intrigue here into the whole recruiting. So scheduling the visit, doing all that stuff. It also becomes interesting because KU is now, with the top 3 recruits in the class of 2024, Trey Johnson, Flory Bidunga, set up visits there. And, whether it's possibly trying to get a guy like the Reclassify or just trying to set yourself up well for the class of 2024 when, what if Hunter Dickinson goes and you have a big opening there at the center position after already losing Ernest Uday and Zuby Ejiofor? Becomes very important to keep building the recruiting forward. And as KU moves out of this, the IRP stuff and the NCAA stuff, we've seen KU be able to land other top-end recruits. We've seen them be able to land 5-star recruits. And, I think Quentin Grimes was a top 10 recruit and Grady Dick was the Gatorade National Player of the Year and other top 20 recruits and Dotson and McDonald's All-Americans. But we haven't seen them really, since this stuff happened, be able to land like those top 5 recruits, the Josh Jacksons of the world, the Andrew Wiggins of the world. And, I think the most ideal roster construction is a team like I always think back to how you added Josh Jackson, where he didn't have to be the number 1 guy. You had Frank Mason, you had other really good players like Devontae Graham, Landon Lucas, and so forth. But he was able to add that extra punch, right? And that's ideally what you're able to do with this, but you haven't been able to land those players since then. Now, are those two things related? Are they not? I don't know. I kind of think they are. Again, you've been able to land really good players, but not like the top tier guy. Now, maybe as you're getting out of this, you're going to have a better chance with some of these guys like a Trey Johnson and Bidunga. And this is a player who has really kind of risen up the recruiting rankings. Somebody who just started playing basketball a few years ago. He has really kind of taken off since he started playing basketball. We'll get into the scouting report and how he would fit in with KU to finish up on the show here. But yeah, as of right now, basically you're said, visits, all that sort of stuff. And the big question becomes, will he reclassify? He was asked in an interview by 24/7 Sports, and he just straight up said, no, I will not reclassify. Now, is that, I don't know, is that just like a firm plan? Kind of sounds firm by the short sentence that was used there. Is that how he's feeling at the moment, or is that something that a coaching staff could convince? Is it something that the coaching staff would want to convince, right? If you're Bill Self, are you going, we'd rather you not reclassify because we don't want you being mad that you only played, 8 to 10 minutes per game as Hunter Dickinson's backup, and then you transfer away and you go somewhere else? Or if you're KU, do you view it as, hey, we can bring you in for this year, and you view this year as a developmental year. You were going to spend this year at playing prep ball anyway. So what's the big difference if you don't play a ton here, right? You're still going to get 8 to 10 minutes a game as the backup center. And then in year 2 with us in the program, I mean, if you're that good in those 8 to 10 minutes, maybe you can go pro after that 1 year. If we win a title and it's like Donovan Clingan could have gone and he might've been a first round pick for Connecticut playing like 12 minutes per game for them. Maybe there's that situation there, but guess what? Worst case in 2024, Hunter Dickinson goes, you're our starting center. And, I guess if Hunter Dickinson comes back for year 2, you can always use your transfer. And it's like you're at your school like you were going to be as a freshman, but now you have college experience under your belt. And guess what? We're going to get you NIL money in year 1 that you wouldn't be making in playing the prep level. So like there are certain reasons you could maybe try to convince him to reclassify. And the idea there for Kansas, again, the negative would be you don't want him feeling like, oh, I only got these backup minutes. But if you come in with that plan, the idea of that happening so that he can be the starting center the next year, then maybe that works out. But also for KU, you're searching for another body. You're searching for another center right now. So it would make some sense to be like, yeah, there's no pressure on you. You'd come in and be the backup center. And then the next year you could star as the guy we expect you to be. But now you'd have a year in the system and all that sort of stuff, to where, it could make some sense. That would check a lot of boxes for KU, both in terms of the future center, in terms of having a backup center right now that you would bring in at this point with expectations that wouldn't necessarily be that starting level player. So it would make sense from KU's perspective. I guess from his perspective, though, he'd rather keep developing as like the star player on a team, as a player who's getting a lot of those touches. And that seems to be the indication that he's not going to reclassify. Again, you start throwing some things around there. You start getting convincing people, talking convincingly like Bill Self can be. You start throwing numbers around with NIL money and stuff. Maybe that stuff can budge. Maybe it can move. But overall, I think the expectation is that's not going to happen, at least for now. All right, let's get on to the scouting report for Flory Bidunga here. First, though, this episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by Built Bar. Looking for a delicious snack but don't want all the sugar and calories? Then you need to try the best tasting protein bar ever with Built. You want to eat healthier during the day. You want to have healthy snacks. You don't want to be eating junk food during the day. Well, with Built Bar, you're going to get a healthy snack alternative during the day, but you're not going to have to compromise on the taste, because a lot of times if you're going for that junk food, it's like, well, it just tastes good. Built Bar is good for you and it tastes good. They're covered in 100% real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. They maintain amazing macros, taste like candy bars, and they're only 130 calories with 4 grams of sugar, a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering Built Bars at Built.com, but now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club, while you can still get your specialty flavors at Built.com. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, grab yourself a 4-bar box of Built Bars. You can get 4-bar boxes of cookies and cream, double chocolate bar, coconut puffs, or if you're close to a Sam's Club, you can walk in and get a 13-bar box of hit flavors like brownie batter and churro puff, and just really stock up with those 13 bars. So you can get that at Sam's Club or Walmart or at Built.com with Built Bar. On to the scouting report for Flory Bidunga. So this obviously won't be as much of a scouting report as in the same vein in how we did like Mackenzie and Baco's, where we don't have as much from the numbers perspective, right? We don't have, college basketball numbers. We don't have things to point to. So a lot of these are going to be pulling excerpts from different scouting services and stuff to kind of put things together, and then we'll put the picture together for you here. So we'll start with the strengths. This is Jamie Shaw from On3. Flory Bidunga is a physical specimen. At 6'10", he has long arms, broad shoulders, and a lot of burst. He's an excellent shot blocker, both on the ball and from the weak side. He has natural timing and can get up to the square quickly, even through contact. Bidunga runs the floor quickly and purposefully. He can push the break with his handle, but does not get too deep and out of control. So pretty much what you're talking about there is a center that has good size, length, is physical, is a good athlete, runs well up and down the floor. You can, he's the number 3 recruit in the country. You can see the potential there. Offensively, Bidunga has a good IQ. He is smart in dribble handoffs and can post wide and deep on the block. If help comes, he's able to find the open man and deliver a good pass. He is a good offensive rebounder. Those things all sound great for a KU offense. Good IQ. Bill Self likes that. I mean, every coach likes that. Smart in dribble handoffs. KU runs that a lot. Can post wide and deep on the block. Okay, KU loves big men that can post up. If help comes, able to find an open man, deliver a good pass. That's important when you're a team that likes to post up. And then physically, he is like a college upperclassman and is already one of the premier explosive athletes in high school basketball. Now, if we do go back to the reclassification conversation, one big problem a lot of times with guys who reclassify is, are they physically ready? Are they physically able to do it? We've seen situations where guys reclassify and it doesn't work out and it stunts their growth, or they're just not ready to play right away and it takes them an extra year. We've also seen other guys who have been physically ready. The one that sticks out to me the most is Marvin Bagley. Marvin Bagley reclassified, that was like an August pickup or something. It was really late in the game, and ended up going to Duke. And that freshman year ended up being, first team all ACC, ended up being a first round pick, top 5 pick, like unbelievable college season in his 1 year. So it can work, but you have to be physically ready. And I know that's been a knock, like with Trey Johnson, who's the number 1 recruit in 24/7 Sports. He's still trying to work on his physicality, adding weight, adding more strength to his build. Not as much the case with Bidunga. So if you if that does become more of a conversation of would he reclassify, that is something to keep in mind, that he does, according to this, sound more physically ready to be able to do just that. Now, there was a really good in the Athletics, Seth Davis wrote it about Bidunga and kind of his come up on the high school level of how he hadn't been playing basketball for a while, and he just had this soaring rise. Here's one excerpt from that. Again, I highly recommend just checking out the whole story. For a guy who flew under the radar for so long, Bidunga sure is hard to miss. He stands a chiseled 6'9" and 215 pounds with long arms and unusual bounce for a player his size. He's a prolific dunker who catches post entries in traffic, finishes with both hands. He's a natural lefty, so that'd be kind of fun. You'd have him and Dickinson, both lefties, right? Is a rapid repeat jumper and routinely beats guards down the floor. He's equally dominant on the defensive end. Moreover, Bidunga plays the game with a high motor and cheerful demeanor, and by all accounts, he is extremely coachable. I mean, it almost sounds like a mix of I'll throw 3 KU comps into one, and we'll put them into a blender. So you have the Ernest Uday kind of comp of being a guy who's really long and a guy who runs the floor really well. Like Ernest runs the floor like a gazelle. He gets up and down the floor, man. He long strides, like all that stuff. Then you have a little bit of a Cliff Alexander comp, like 6'9". Now on 3 lists him at 6'10". I don't know, but Cliff Alexander was more like 6'8". But you're talking about a center who, this isn't a 7-footer, right? Which usually, if you're ranked this high, you're 7 feet tall or something. But he's that springy type of athlete who's really strong. And then the other one is kind of the Joel Embiid, and I don't mean to be like, oh, he's going to be NBA MVP. Like, no, I just mean guy who hasn't played basketball that long, very raw, but is picking up the game very quickly. And that kind of is the case with Bidunga. So kind of mix those 3 in a blender there, and you probably end up with something really, really good. So, I mean, what you're talking about here with all the strengths is someone that, yes, I mean, you're talking about the number 3 recruit in the country. So every team would be lucky to have him. Every team would be like, oh, yeah, we'll make this work, and this guy's going to have a serious impact on your program. But for KU, when we talk about them liking to build around the big, it certainly makes a lot of sense. Now, we have seen other big men. I mean, that's been a position. When you think of the KU freshmen that have come in and made the biggest impact, most of them are wings. You know, when you think of the best one-and-done freshmen under Bill Self, it's Andrew Wiggins and Josh Jackson and Grady Dick. And, you know, if you want to count Ben McElmore, like he would be a wing too. Xavier Henry had a good, right? You think about the one-and-done freshmen, the wings have an easier time transitioning in. I don't know if there's a reason for that. Maybe there's more different things you have to learn as the center, or maybe because you're kind of the backbone of the defense, and because how much Bill Self needs to trust you, and with your importance on both ends of the floor, like being kind of the primary option on offense in a lot of ways, posting up. Maybe there's just a bigger learning curve. There's a big man, because you think about some of the, 5-star big men they brought in, and it has been a longer learning curve from Cliff Alexander to Shaq Diallo. Joel Embiid, as talented, as great as he wasn't starting to begin the season. So maybe this is a guy that you would have to temper expectations for from that standpoint. But he does everything there that you're kind of looking for. Is kind of a raw prospect. So maybe into that blender of those guys I mentioned, maybe you do throw a Shaq Diallo in there, and that didn't, work out at Kansas. He's obviously had a productive NBA career afterwards, but he certainly would be someone who you would expect to be a very good player wherever he goes, especially at KU. His weaknesses. This is from On Three's Jamie Shaw. The jump shot extends out to about 10 feet. So we would like to see him work on stretching that out some. He needs to improve his free throws as he gets to the line a lot. So not really a great shooter. He's more of the old-fashioned big men, like rim runner, would be good in pick and roll, which is great since you have DeJuan Harris, whether it's this year or next year, right? Could have DeJuan for 2 years. Get him in the dunker spot, throw lobs to him. But it sounds like he does have a little bit more post movement to him than maybe like Ernest and Zuby possibly had for you like last year. And I think the biggest thing is, by him not playing basketball a ton of years, does that mean he's raw? Does that mean it's going to take him a little bit longer to get accustomed to the college game, because there are certain things or more things that he has to learn, because the learning curve is a little bit better, even though you're molding the ball of clay, but the ball of clay is I don't know. Are there multiple types of clay? Is one more expensive than the other? But basically he has the potential to be this extremely extravagant, well-made item. But is it going to take a little bit longer to form that stuff out? That becomes kind of a question. And for a player who's expected to be a one and done, if you're only going to get 1 year out of him, again, you only got 1 year out of Shaq Diallo and it didn't really work out. Is that worth it for you in that situation? Obviously, you take the risk because the potential of those players is that high. But going back to the conversation about the wings versus the bigs, is one and done's working or not working for KU? That certainly would be a story. But you would expect if Bidunga did pick KU, you would expect him to be a very big impact player for sure. All right, let's finish up with how he would fit in to the roster here with Locked On Jayhawks. How would Flory Bidunga fit into the roster? I think a lot of people would buy Flory Bidunga jerseys, by the way, just because the last name is awesome. And he sends we talked about, cheerful demeanor, high motor, loved by the coach. It seems like he would be like a KU favorite, right? I mean, heck, maybe you even throw in, I added like 4 KU players into a blender. Maybe we throw in Thomas Robinson with the cheerful demeanor or the high motor and stuff. And maybe we throw in who had a cheerful demeanor. Man, why can Devontae Graham? Okay, we just made the dumbest player comp blender of all time. So I'm just going to stop there. But how he would fit in? Let's look at this in 2 ways. The first way, if he reclassifies. The second way, if he's in the class of 2024. If Flory Bidunga reclassified, which I do not believe is going to happen, but if it did, then he would fit in immediately as your backup center. You would look at the roster and you'd say, okay, Hunter Dickinson is our starting 5. It doesn't sound like Bidunga based on the idea that, he can't really stretch out past 10 feet much. You wouldn't play him next to Hunter Dickinson, right? So he'd be your backup center. I would imagine he'd play all of your backup center minutes. So if Dickinson gives you 32 minutes a game, that's 8. If he gives you 30 minutes a game, that's 10. So he's playing all your backup center minutes. That allows for KJ Adams to basically just be your emergency center, your third string center that you're not playing there, but in case somebody gets hurt and in foul trouble, then he can be your backup center. KJ's playing the 4 position. What would that look like when Bidunga's on the floor next to KJ Adams? I don't know. Maybe you work out your minutes that if KJ's playing, 30 minutes per game at the 4, all his minutes or 25 minutes, whatever, are when Hunter Dickinson's on the floor. And then whenever Bidunga's out there are the minutes Marcus Adams plays, so that you always have one of those 2 big men or a shooter out there, right? So that is some way that you could make that work. And if you did reclassify, it obviously raises your game this year. It basically checks off the box that you wouldn't need to go out and get like a different center to just be a body. It would also still leave you with 2 open scholarships that you could go out and get a wing player who could play the 3 or the 4 for you. It would check a lot of boxes for you this year. And then if you did reclassify, if he has that good season as a backup, you go into the following season going, okay, this guy's probably going to be our starter. Or if Hunter Dickinson comes back for year 2, then he's probably like, okay, I'm going to transfer out and go somewhere else. So that's probably how that would kind of all work out. Now, if he does not reclassify, and if he does just stay in the class of 2024, then the fit on the team obviously is dependent on who's back on the team. And in this day and age, in this, modern era of college basketball, it's almost impossible to know who is going to be on the team year to year. You kind of just have to get to it when you get there, right? Like every year is a new fork in the road. And instead of just left or right, there are 17 different directions in which you can go to. And so you don't totally know. But in theory, DeJuan Harris can be back for a 6th year. KJ Adams can be back for what would be his senior year. Hunter Dickinson could be back for another year. So, I mean, if you're talking how he'd fit, if it's class of 2024, if Hunter Dickinson comes back for his 2nd year, he probably just wouldn't even pick Kansas. Like that wouldn't even be a thing. But I guess at that point, if he did, he'd be the backup 5 and then would take over the year after, hypothetically. But that probably wouldn't work out. Let's say Hunter Dickinson does leave after this 1 year at Kansas. Then you're looking at Flory Bidunga. If he just goes to the class of 2024, he comes in with the potential to be a one and done. That would be, I'm sure, his expectation from his camp and everything. And you would feel like, right now, K doesn't have the successor plan to Hunter Dickinson, that he would come out and be the starting center in 2024. And obviously with him in a 6th year DeJuan Harris, at that point, you feel like that would be a pretty lethal combination of pick and roll. And it doesn't really prevent you from, bringing on other recruits at that point at the center position, if he is going to be a one and done who are either future guys, but it probably would impact you bringing on at that point. You wouldn't be bringing on like another Hunter Dickinson type player, because he would be your Hunter Dickinson type player for 2024 as far as an impact center to come in right away. So that would be the impact, how he'd fit in with the team. Obviously, this is a must take. This is a, take any way you can get any year, whether it's this year reclassifying or next year in 2024, and you figure out the rest later if he does want to commit for the final verdict there. But that'll do it, though, for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks, deep dive on Flory Bidunga. We're going to try to get to an Arthur Kaluma deep dive in the week. We'll try to do a Julian Phillips one. We'll have some conversation on Kevin McCullough, the NBA draft kind of process is really kicking up here with the combine getting going from Tuesday to Thursday. So we'll see measurements, we'll see different physical workout stuff, we'll see some of the scrimmage stuff, and that could impact who comes back, who stays in the draft, what options are available to Kansas. So we'll get into some of those player deep dives throughout the week and decisions to be made, all that stuff upcoming later this week with Locked On Jayhawks. You can find us wherever you get any of your podcasts. You can also like and subscribe to us on YouTube. Have a good rest of your day. See you next time with LOJ.